Welcome to the Rebellion Podcast. This is Ryan Staker. This is episode 56. Okay, today's episode, remembering Bryce Dejean-Jones. So who's Bryce Dejean-Jones? He is a player that played for UNLV back from 2011 to 2013 range. And I decided to do an episode on him because there's a lot of really interesting things to talk about in regards to Bryce. The player that he was, the potential he had, the story behind him, you know, all the things, the events that took place that led to his unfortunate passing. There's a lot of things to talk about, okay? And I want to remember Bryce, and I want other people to remember Bryce. So this is kind of my way of, you know, putting his story out there, and it's just mind-blowing, really, when you look at everything involved with Bryce Dejean-Jones and, you know, really what could have been, right? We're talking about someone who is such a fierce competitor, so much talent, wanted to win so bad, wanted to rip your throat out. He wanted to win so bad. But there's this one thing that was holding him back from becoming this star NBA player. There was this one thing that kept him shackled from becoming the player he wanted to be, to reaching his full potential, and that was his inability to control his anger, okay? A lot of people out there in this world struggle with emotional regulation and anger management, and it's just this thing that people, once you're able to figure out, it opens up so many more doors and possibilities in life once you're able to get to a place where you can control your emotions, right? When you think about Bryce Dejean-Jones, it's kind of like David Banner, what's his name? Bruce Banner, sorry. Marvel fans are mad at me right now. Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk, right? How Bruce Banner was a good guy, a scientist, you know, got along with everyone, he was very likable. But when he got mad, he turned into this giant green rage monster, okay? And that's kind of how I like to look at Bryce Dejean-Jones. Had Bryce figured out a way to get his anger and his temper under control, had he stayed away from alcohol, which was one of his biggest triggers, who knows what this dude could have done, right? And that's what this story is about. So before we get into all that and everything that happened to him and what the incident that happened in Texas, let's start from the beginning, right? So Bryce was born August 21st, 1992, okay? Growing up, he loved to play video games. He loved skateboarding. He was really into Harry Potter books, and he had really good grades, okay? He was a good kid and a really good student. He played basketball his whole life. His dream was to play in the NBA. He wanted to be Kobe Bryant. Just, you know, that's who he idolized. And his senior year, he attended Taft High School, and he averaged 16.9 points, 7.5 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 1.6 steals, and shot 56.8% of his shots, or made 56.8% of his shots, including 49% from beyond the arc. That's lights out, okay? A very highly recruited player. You know, it was well known what a good talent he was. He played for Compton Magic AAU, which is one of the more famous and well-known AAU programs in the West Coast, is the Compton Magic. A lot of very good players have come out of the Compton Magic. So Bryce ended up signing with USC, University of Southern California, out of high school. And he actually did very well there, considering he was a true freshman. He appeared in 18 of 34 games, and he started the first 10 games. So starting 10 games for a Pac-12 school as a true freshman is very impressive. So in 20.6 minutes per game at USC, he averaged 7.6 points, 2.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and 1.1 steals per game, while shooting 38% from the field and 34.5% from the three-point range. Okay, he scored double figures in 7 games, okay, including 21 points against New Mexico State. Bryce was kicked out of practice multiple times for fighting, okay? This is just what he was known for. Basketball is very competitive. College sports, very, very competitive. It can get really physical. There's a lot of trash talk. And Bryce, unfortunately, just struggled to just let things go, okay? And that is what his coaches have always said to him. Like, Bryce, you need to learn to walk away. When someone is yapping, know yourself. Know that you are going to lose control. Know that you're going to end up fighting, and know that this is going to turn out bad if you just don't walk away. You know who said that to him? Alvin Gentry, his coach for the New Orleans Pelicans. Fred Hoiberg, his coach at Iowa State. Dave Rice, his coach at UNLV. Kevin O'Neal, his coach at USC, as well as his AAU coach. Every one of them said, Bryce, you got to learn to walk away. So due to a lot of the conflicts with USC and among other reasons, he decided to transfer. And that is where he ended up at UNLV. Now, I still remember when we landed Bryce Dejean-Jones. We got the news. It was shortly after Dave Rice was hired. He was the first. Bryce Dejean-Jones was the first player in the Dave Rice era, the first recruit. Okay, so I remember the news when we got him, and there was all these rumors about him, like how talented he was, but he's kind of a hothead, this and that. But it looked like a pretty good pickup, right? So, I'm someone who's always going to be. I'm pro taking the guy who's a high risk, high reward. That's just kind of how my mind works, right? And that was what Tark was famous for, was taking those guys and then teaching them how to control like their impulses, how to, step away from the gang life and then put all their focus into basketball and in academics and becoming not just only the best basketball player they could be, but the best man they could be, right? So Bryce Dejean-Jones would have been a perfect player for Jerry Tarkanian. So we got Bryce, and then he redshirted his first year, because this is back when you actually had to redshirt when you transferred versus today where everyone can just transfer anytime they want and play right away. So he redshirted during the 2011-2012 season. That was the season where we got a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. We beat North Carolina. We had a really good first year. Now, coming into the 2012-2013 season, this was the team that was really, really hyped up. The most hyped up UNLV team we've had since Jerry Tarkanian. We were preseason ranked. People were picking us to go to the Final Four. He was coming in alongside with Anthony Bennett, Cam Birch. There was so many reasons to be excited for that team. Now, I'll never forget how Bryce word was coming out that he was absolutely dominating in practice during his redshirt year, that people were saying he was the best player on the floor. They're saying he's an NBA player. They're saying he is just a diamond in the rough talent, and that people don't realize how good he's going to be. Okay. So it was really, really exciting knowing we had that player coming in. Okay, so during that 2012-2013 season, he averaged 10.3 points. He was third in the team in steals and assists with 0.9 and 2.3 per game, respectively. And then he was fourth in rebounds with 4.4 rebounds per game, leading the team in scoring on 5 different occasions and rebounding twice. He also dished out a career-high 6 assists in 3 different games and exploded for 22 points on 7-11 shooting in a really big 76-75 win over California to help UNLV earn its best non-conference road win of the season. I remember that game very well. Bryce Dejean-Jones and Anthony Bennett dominated, and we beat a very good California team on the road. It was quite exciting, okay? 2013-2014, this is when the disappointment kind of started for the Dave Rice era. We started having these really talented teams not play to their potential. Kind of, they were very overrated in a sense to start the season, and we lost way too many games to inferior opponents. And Bryce Jones was supposed to be a superstar alongside Kem Birch and Russell Smith, a very talented big three that we had on that team. I mean, Bryce Dejean-Jones and Kem Birch were probably the 2 most talented players in the Mountain West, yet we ended up finishing like 6th place or something like that year. And then he had his career-high 28 points against Air Force that season. Okay, so similar to what happened at USC, things were happening at UNLV where Bryce was regularly getting fights, get kicked out of practice. He just had such a difficult time managing his anger, okay? That's just basketball, right? There's a lot of trash talk. It's physical. There's cheap shots. You just have to stay composed. How many times have you been watching a big game on TV? like a football game, right? And some knucklehead cheap shots someone and it causes his team a penalty. That's why it's so important to learn how to keep your cool, okay? I know I've had plenty of moments in my life where I just exploded with anger and said something or did something that I regretted. You can't be that way, right? You got to learn how to just take a deep breath, or once you feel yourself starting to get angry, just walk away. Okay, that was what Bryce needed. He needed more coping mechanisms. Okay, so he decided to transfer from UNLV. I was disappointed, but it kind of felt like an amicable sort of breakup. Like it was kind of like Bryce wanted to leave, but also UNLV wanted Bryce to leave too. So as much as I didn't want to see him go, I knew it was a headache with him and fights and causing so many problems in practice that I wasn't too upset that he left. All right, it was just disappointing because we thought we were getting this superstar, this guy that was going to go be an NBA, like a first round NBA draft pick someday, and he didn't quite live up to that hype. Even though you could see the talent, like the guy was just ridiculously talented. And he showed that at stints during his next school when he transferred to Iowa State. So Bryce played in 33 games at Iowa State during the 2014-2015 season. Starting 21, he averaged 10.5 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 2.1 assists, and 1.1 steals, while shooting a career high 47.6% from the field. He scored in double figures 17 times and even earned CBSSports.com National Player of the Week honors after he scored 27 in Iowa State's win against nationally ranked Arkansas. In that game, he went 8 for 8, becoming the 5th player in school history of at least 8 field goal attempts without a miss. So an awesome performance for Bryce. During his time at Iowa State, he got in trouble. Okay, there was multiple times where the cops came to his apartment. They smelled marijuana in there. Same thing, getting in fights. Trouble seemed to follow Bryce everywhere he went. Okay, there's a lot of quotes from his teammates saying like Bryce was a good dude. He was a good dude. He had a good heart. He needed to stay away from alcohol, right? Because alcohol tend to turn Bryce into a rage monster. It tend to turn him to a different person. Okay, we know people like that. Some people just flat out can't handle alcohol. Okay, I know there's someone very close to me who is one of the most amazing people in the world. Like this guy is unbelievably awesome person. He gets drunk, he turns into a monster. He's mean. He's sloppy. He's willing to fight anyone. Like who are you, right? Like this is what this alcohol does to certain people, right? And it affects everyone different. Like for me, alcohol just makes me kind of sleepy and happy, right? It makes me like love everyone. For some people, it's the opposite. It makes them want to fight, right? And Bryce, unfortunately, was one of those people. He also had a lot of incidents involving marijuana. Okay, combine marijuana with alcohol, that's not going to help matters. Okay, so he helped Iowa State get to the Big 12 tournament. So you would say overall he had a pretty successful season at Iowa State, arguably his most successful season in his career. So next was the 2015 NBA draft. Bryce was hoping to get drafted. However, he went to undrafted. And then after getting undrafted, he got a phone call from the New Orleans Pelicans to join their Summer League team. Bryce did a pretty good job playing with the Pelicans in Summer League, good enough to get invited to training camp. And then he played in the preseason. So he would eventually get waived, which is pretty common for a lot of young players, especially players who go undrafted, get waived towards the end of preseason. Then he would go on to take his talents to the NBA Development League for the Idaho Stampede. He did very, very well for the Idaho Stampede. I think his game, the way he plays, it's the G League was great for him to showcase his talents, right? It's a lot of offense, a lot of up and down, a lot of shooting, right? And that's where Bryce would thrive, okay? Such a talented player. So much, in fact, that the NBA was taking notice, and New Orleans Pelicans, they called him up for a 10-day contract. He stepped in for Tyreek Evans, who was out with a really bad injury. He took advantage of that opportunity. He couldn't have taken advantage better, in fact, as he ended up becoming a starter and having a lot of really good games for the Pelicans. Okay, I remember watching Bryce on TV, and I remember seeing him just looking confident out there, taking people off the dribble and scoring. Say what you want about Bryce Dejean-Jones. The man was not afraid of anyone. He will take it at you. It doesn't matter who he is. He has a lot of Kobe Bryant in him. Not just his style of play, the way he plays, but just his mindset and how much he wants to win, like how serious he takes this. Now, I think Kobe had his head on better, and Kobe obviously was just this phenomenal talent. I mean, it's Kobe Bryant, right? He went straight from high school to the NBA at 17 years old. So Bryce wasn't quite at that talent level, but he was pretty close, right? So, and that was the player that Bryce idolized and tried to mimic his game after. So he had his best game where he scored 17 points and grabbed 19 rebounds against the Los Angeles Lakers, okay, his hometown team. And then this was good enough for the New Orleans Pelicans to offer Bryce a 3-year deal in which he signed with. So Bryce Dejean-Jones, I mean, he made it. He signed a 3-year deal with the New Orleans Pelicans. This was it. His dreams are coming true. I mean, this is such a monumental moment for a player like Bryce, who's kind of been under the radar. He went undrafted. He's one of those players who, their dream is to get that contract, right? They're going to do everything they can to get it, okay? And he did it, and he accomplished it. Extremely proud of Bryce because I'm not going to lie, I didn't see him getting to that level. I thought his head was going to get in the way too much, and his anger problems and all that was going to keep him from reaching his potential. Same with Chris Wood. Okay, it just shows how talented these guys were, that once they figured it out and kind of started to learn the game better, they were able to get an NBA contract, right? Okay, so then he got a season-ending injury, okay? What did he do? He fractured his wrist, okay, and was out for the season. So signs a 3-year contract, has a season-ending injury, and then it was the off-season of 2016 that, unfortunately, Bryce's dreams all came to an end, where there was an incident at 3 a.m. in the morning in Dallas, Texas. His girlfriend was in her apartment with their 1-year-old daughter. And I don't know all the details of what was going on, but they were clearly fighting, and she did not want Bryce over, and Bryce wanted to see his daughter. And so he goes to the apartment complex. He goes to what he believes is his girlfriend's apartment door, starts banging, like, let me in, let me in. Starts banging louder. He's drunk, okay? He has marijuana in his system, and he's getting increasingly angry, okay? He just keeps banging. He's kicking the door really hard with his foot. He doesn't realize that this is the wrong apartment room. This is on another floor, okay? Meanwhile, while he's doing this, a man is laying in bed, because it was a guy who was a teacher. He had just finished watching an NBA Finals game, and he had went to bed. And so he wakes up to this banging on his door, and he's kind of freaked out by this, as anyone would be. Okay, so he even said, like, hello, like he's calling out, like who's there, or something, something of that nature. And Bryce doesn't say anything. Bryce just keeps banging. And then all of a sudden, bam, Bryce actually like kicks in the door, or breaks through the door. And at this point, the man in the room had no choice. He had to pull out his gun and start shooting. He was terrified. I mean, this is 3 a.m. with someone angrily yelling and banging on. He doesn't know who's out there. He doesn't know what's going on. He's terrified. He's scared, right? So he starts shooting. And a few bullets hit Bryce right in the abdomen. And then he had to be rushed to the hospital, where he unfortunately was not able to hold on. And on May 28th, 2016, Bryce Dejean-Jones unfortunately lost his life. Okay. A very shocking, sad, terrible moment for the UNLV community, the Iowa State community, the New Orleans Pelicans, a player so young who just signed a 3-year contract, who really was a good person at heart, for their life to come to an end just because of a bad moment, just because of alcohol. Had Bryce not been drinking that night, he would have been banging on that door at 3 a.m. He wouldn't have been doing that. So it's really sad because you would hope someone who's given this opportunity in life, a 3-year NBA contract, millions of dollars, you would hope they would take advantage of that and not put themselves in a position for something bad to happen to them, okay? So there's definitely some controversy surrounding this incident. I want to read some quotes about Bryce Dejean-Jones, and then we'll get into some of those controversies. So he was a really good kid, says Justin Hawkins, who is a former UNLV basketball player and current UNLV assistant coach. Just says Justin Hawkins, his teammate in high school and then at UNLV. He was funny. He had sarcasm too. If he trusted you, he could open up and really let himself go. And then another teammate says he was a good guy. Recalls a teammate who wanted to be anonymous, who should not have been drinking. So people knew Bryce. They knew how he was sober. They knew how he was when he was drinking. And it's just a shame, right, that this had to happen. Okay, very sad. So I want to read some of the comments on Reddit about this particular story. So this was in reference to an article talking about what happened with Bryce, and it kind of, I would say, it kind of maybe paints the picture. You could say that Bryce was this victim, and he shouldn't have been shot and all that. And then so people are kind of weighing in on this, but someone says this article is frustrating. It feels like he was trying to the author was trying to minimize his troubled history and the event of his death. This line in particular is very troubling to me. And then in quotes, if the man living in the apartment felt so threatened that he had to shoot my son like a dead dog, at least tell me how it happened, because I can't make any sense of it, end quote. So that was the father of Bryce Dejean-Jones, obviously upset that his son was shot. Now, I get it coming from a parent of someone, no one should ever have to bury their son. No one should ever have to go through this. And you're going to see things through a different lens, right? When it happens to your kid, you're going to think like, why did he have to shoot him? Why couldn't he have just pointed the gun at him? However, like when you look at it from an outsider's perspective, the guy was terrified. I mean, we're talking about loud banging, kicking down a door. I think most people with a gun probably would have pulled the trigger, right? And then this person says, you have a troubled son who has anger issues. He literally broke his way into a stranger's home through 2 locked doors, yet you feel as though he was somehow wronged. I'm guessing the dad is suffering so much he can't make sense of it, which is what he says. Or he just doesn't want to admit that his son did something evil. I can't say I've been in his situation, so I really don't know. And then someone said, to add to this, what if he actually was in the right apartment? His girlfriend and 1-year-old child were in there. What exactly was going to happen to them when he raged up and then kicked through the door with 2 deadbolt locks? Okay, we'll never know. So this person's basically saying, he was trying to break into a room. What if he would have broken into the right room? What would have happened to his girlfriend and 1-year-old? Okay. And that's kind of, I'm sure a lot of people who know Bryce would say nothing would have happened. But I mean, if he was angry enough to bust down a double locked steel door, a deadbolt locked door, then who knows what he would have done, right? His dad also says, it makes no sense to me, says Walter, Bryce's father. None. Even if he were a wild man kicking in the door, let's say that's true. Don't you think he'd immediately see the furniture and say, oh shit, I'm in the wrong place, and walk out? I'm not saying anyone is lying, but it doesn't fully compute. And then this person responded to that saying, you would think he'd recognize that he was in the wrong apartment, but you would also think he'd understand he's on the wrong floor. He was drunk, and as many people claim, when he loses it, he really flies off the handle. So I guess a drunk guy with anger problems in the middle of a rage didn't understand he was in the wrong floor or in the wrong apartment even. So it's just, regardless of what your opinion is on what happened with Bryce, whether you think he deserved this or he's a bad guy or he was a victim, it's just a sad story all around, right? Because this was not a bad guy. This was not a gangbanger, okay? This was just someone that had difficulties with emotional regulation. okay? This was someone who needed more time in therapy, maybe meds, something to help him kind of relax, calm down, do some yoga. I don't know, because I mean, this guy could have been a multimillionaire star NBA player if he just kept his head on straight. Because wow, what a talent he was. I was such a big Bryce Dejean-Jones fan when we had him. You know, I would watch hours of his highlights, and I predicted going into the 2013-2014 season, he was going to average 20 a game. He was going to be the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, because I was like, this is going to be Bryce's time. He's going to blow up, and he's going to be a first-round pick. And unfortunately, he just got in his own way all the time. So I think this whole story is, to me, the theme of this is people need to recognize the things that are holding them back in life, whether it's your brain or it's an outside source like alcohol. In his case, it was both of those things, right? Once you realize what is hurting you, what's bad for you, what you need to really get away from, then you can work on it. Then you can get help, okay? And only you can fix you, okay? You have to want it. You have to want to put in the work. Okay, it can't be someone else. It can't be someone else saying you need to stop drinking. It can't be someone else saying you need anger management. It's got to come from you. It's got to come within. Okay, Bryce, may you rest in peace. You are a rebel for life. Okay, I love you. And wherever you are, I hope you're happy, and I hope you're looking down on your daughter, and I hope she's growing up into this young, smart, intelligent, wonderful young lady. And till next time, Rebel fans.